In this part, we're going to continue from where we left off in part 1, where we had this meeting view, and we'll continue creating a card view. And the card view is going to keep a list of scrums. And so let's build the card view. So we're already starting from this point, so we don't need to download this. So let's create a color theme. So to do that, we'll create a group called models. So let's right click, create a new group called models. Now we can create a new SwiftUI file called theme.swift. So right click, new Swift file called theme.swift, and now we can create the Swift theme. So let's import SwiftUI here. So let's create the theme enumeration. So if we have an enumeration called theme and a raw value of string, so enumeration theme, and it has a raw value of string. Now we can go ahead and add the values. So we can add the cases for each color that is listed in the asset catalog. Now we could create these colors here, or we can do it manually. So what we'll do here is select that, add these in here, and then we can copy over the asset catalog values. So let's actually find the project which has the values. I think it's example, and we can copy them over. It's called Scrumdinger. So to copy over the values, we can go to assets, themes, click, and we can say show in Finder, and that gives us all the values here. So we can just copy all the values that are in the themes folder, and we can go back to our project, which is this one, and click show in Finder, and we can paste it in the assets folder here. So now this assets folder should have the same values, except we needed a folder called themes. So let's undo that, or we can paste it inside the themes folder if we go back to Xcode. So we have these values, and we can just move them to a folder which is in here called themes. And to move it, just select all of them except themes and move them in. So now we have this, and this should reflect the same values that's in here in the Scrumdinger project. So now that we have them, we can just go back to our code and go back to our documentation, and we can add this section, which is the accent color, and let's add that here. So this is doing a switch case to return black as the accent color for those colors and white for the accent color for these colors. So let's keep going. Here it's adding the main color, which is the raw value of the system color. So let's keep going. Now we're going to create daily Scrum model. So we can create a Swift file called daily Scrum in the models group. So let's do that. Daily Scrum, and in that model we're going to have the title, attendees, length in minutes, and theme. So let's go ahead and create that. It's a struct which is daily Scrum, and it has a title which is a string. It has a attendee property which is an array of string. It has a length in minutes, which is an int, and it has a theme which is of type theme that we just created. So let's keep going. Add an extension that provides some sample data. So this is just sample data, so we can copy it as is. And this is an extension on the daily Scrum struct. So as we can see, it's got a typo here. So instead of attendee, it's attendees. So now it's building, so should be good. Now we can create the card view. So to create the card view, let's create a new SwiftUI file called card view. And in that card view, we need a body text, or a text inside the body, and we need the Scrum. So let's do that. So the body text is already here and has a property called daily Scrum. So this is going to be just a simple property, and it's called daily Scrum. Now the card view initializer requires a daily Scrum parameter, so that's going to be in here, and we can create a static variable named Scrum and pass it to the card view initializer. So if we have a static, we can pass it into the card view. So let's do that. So static var Scrum, and here it's going to be a daily Scrum data, sample data, the first element, and we can pass it into the Scrum. And here this property is called daily Scrum. So here it's called Scrum, so we can change it to Scrum as well here. So specify a background color for the preview using scrum.theme.mainColor and set the preview size using the preview layout modifier. So we can set the background and then we can set the preview layout modifier. So let's do that. And the background is set to scrum.theme.mainColor, and the layout modifier is dot fixed width 400 and height of 60. So now we have that. Now we can check what the preview should look like here. So right now it's still got a text in here inside the card view. So once we update that, we can see the updated preview. Update the text view to show the title of the scrum and set the font style to headline. So we're going to show the scrum here, and we can set the font style to headline. So back here we have this font style, and this data is coming in from the model sample data, which is here. So back to our meeting card view, and let's keep going. So embed the text view inside a VStack with a leading alignment. So to embed inside a VStack, we can command click this and say embed in VStack, and we can set an alignment to leading and have the closure right after that. So let's go back to this. Add a spacer followed by an H stack that embeds a label for displaying the number of attendees. So we need a spacer and an H stack with the label. So let's do that. Add a spacer below the text and add a H stack, and add the closure with the label, and it has to have the Scrum attendees count and a system image of person.3. So we can have the Scrum attendees count and the system image with the value of person.3. So let's see what that looks like when it refreshes. So it's down here that we have the attendees, which has the person.3 image, and let's zoom in here. So this is the person attendees count, or the Scrum attendees count. Let's go back here. Add a spacer and the label displaying the meeting length. So we can add a spacer and a label displaying the length, and let's do that. So we need a spacer and we need a label, and it's going to have the Scrum meeting length, which is the length in minutes, and it has a system image of clock, and below it it has a modifier which has a trailing padding of with the value of 20. So let's see what that looks like. It's up here, but I think after we add padding to the VStack it should be fine. So style all the fonts inside. Here it says that we can add padding to the leading top and bottom edges. We can do that later, but let's take a look at the font. Style all the fonts inside the H stack as captions. So everything that's inside the H stack can be styled as captions. So let's look for the H stack and font and caption. Now add padding to the VStack and set the foreground color using scrum.theme.accent color. So on the VStack, which is this one, we add a modifier for the padding, and we add a chained modifier for the foreground color, and we can call it scrum.theme.mainColor. Next step is we can customize the label style. So create a new Swift file, trailing icon label style.swift. So let's do that. What's it called? It's called trailing icon label style.swift. Trailing icon label style.swift. And in this file we can import SwiftUI, and create a structure named trailing icon label style that conforms to label style. So the struct has to conform to label style. Struct trailing icon label style conforms to label style, and create an empty make body configuration function. So a make body with a configuration. So let's do that. Function make body. It should be called func, and it takes a configuration as an argument. And it returns a view, and it's some view, and we should be able to compile. So it does compile. We can now add in an 8 stack. So let's add the 8 stack. Now we can add the configuration title and configuration icon. Now we can add an extension on label style that creates a static property named trailing icon. So this is an extension called label style. and it adds the trailing icon. And to add the trailing icon, we say static var trailing icon of type self, and it returns self. So in cardView.swift, replace the padding with the new label style to the length in minutes label. So in our cardView.swift, we can replace the padding with the label style of trailing icon for the length in minutes label. So the length in minutes label is this one, and instead of padding trailing 20, we can just say dot label style dot trailing icon. So the next step, we can take a look at the preview. So it hasn't given us much. We're not seeing the text, and the label here is that this color should be set to accent color. And also in our view here, so we have design and we have the icon for the person.3, and we have our time or the length in minutes down here with the clock. So that's the card view, and it doesn't look the same as this because of how the spacers are, so we're going to fix that. Now it says card view is complete and we can display it in a list. Let's use the accessibility modifiers to improve the experience for voiceover users. So make the card view accessible. So let's do that. In our text inside the vstack, we can add the accessibility add traits. We can call it .isHeader. Sorry about that. So in the text, we can add the modifier .accessibility add traits. So let's do that. And we're going to call this .isHeader. Now for our accessibility label, we're going to add the accessibility modifier to add the label that describes the contents of the first label. So this is going to be pretty straightforward, so we can copy and paste this line, which is on the label. Similarly, we can add the accessibility modifier to the second label, which is this line. So we have the accessibility modifiers. Now we can do this quiz. So how do you add 10 points of space between the text and the label in this code snippet? So to add 10 points, we shouldn't do the spacer. We could do a padding modifier, like a modifier, which seems to be the correct answer. So that's correct. Next question, which framework should you import to define the structure? So for this, we only need Foundation because there's nothing UI related here, so we don't need UI Kit or SwiftUI, so we only need Foundation. Okay, so it does need SwiftUI because color is used and color is defined in SwiftUI. So I was wrong there. How should you set the accessibility label on image in the code snippet below? So to set the accessibility label on image, we could set it like this, or we could set it like this. So it seems that the second option is preferable. Oh, there's a fourth option too, but it should be a modifier, and this is not a modifier. So we'll select the modifier option. So that's right. So it looks like we're done with this part. And the next part is displaying the data in a list. So see you in the next part. Thanks for watching.